This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Do you ever have a story that you just can't get out of your head?
One that you play the details of over and over with your friends?
Well, you've come to the right place. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan.
And this is Justice Pending,
a weekly true crime podcast where we discuss tantalizing crimes with more questions than answers.
Hey everyone, it's Claire.
And Susan, and welcome back to Justice Pending, where we go beyond the headlines to ask what really happened and why justice still hasn't been served.
Today's case takes us to Manhattan, Union Square, a luxury high-rise, a woman in her prime, and a trash chute.
That's right. Lara Prychodko. Beautiful, successful, a mom, a daughter, a sister. And on July 10th, 2018, that was all taken away. She was found dead, crushed at the bottom of the trash compactor at Zeckendorf Towers, 27 stories down.
Oh, police said there was no sign of foul play.
That seemed
that she was. I know. Like, how can there be no sign of foul play when you're found at the bottom of a trash chute?
Yes. I mean,
yeah, it doesn't make sense. So the police said that she was drunk. It was an accident, or maybe even a suicide. But Lara's family, they never accepted that. And 7 years later, they're still fighting for justice.
Well, of course. I mean, this case has all the elements of a mystery novel. It's got a bitter divorce, a custody battle, millions of dollars at stake, a hitman theory. But, at the heart of it, a woman, a life, a life lost too soon.
Absolutely. So let's set the scene. It's a Tuesday afternoon in July 2018. Lara is 48 years old, and she has the day off. France had just won their World Cup semifinal match, and Lara was a big fan. Her grandfather was actually French. So she watched the game at a bar near Union Square. She was seen smiling and high-fiving the doorman on the way back to her apartment.
At 4:10 p.m. exactly, she's seen on security footage entering the building and getting on the elevator, alone. And that's the last confirmed sighting of her alive.
10 minutes later, a neighbor on the 27th floor hears loud banging in the hallway and steps out. There's no one there. But there's a purse on the floor, Lara's purse, right outside the trash chute.
By 4:40 p.m., the building's maintenance worker checks the compactor because it's jammed, and that's when he finds her body.
It's just horrific.
Yeah.
It's been crushed, mangled, there's blunt force trauma, and the medical examiner notes, when they do a toxicology report, that her blood alcohol level was 0.29. So the cause of death is listed as blunt impact injuries. The manner of death, however, is undetermined. But at that point, they said they didn't suspect foul play.
Yeah, and that's where Lara's family says the system has failed. I have to say I agree with them because everything about this scene, everything felt wrong to them. And her father, Nicholas, couldn't believe it.
You have to think about the detail from the neighbor about her purse being outside the trash compactor. So the idea that she is going to, if you're going with suicide here, she's going to commit suicide, and she walks out with her purse and then is like, let me just jump in this trash compactor and I'll just lay my purse down right next to it. It's strange. It doesn't feel... it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I got news for you. If you're going the suicide route and you're in Manhattan and you're on the 27th floor, you're jumping out the building. I mean, it just seems like a more logical way, even in a trash compactor or a trash chute. Let's say, you think it's fun to go sliding down 27th floor. You're not guaranteed to end in that compactor situation. You might end up in a bin. I mean,
right.
I don't think anyone would know where that actually leads. So Yeah, the suicide thing to me doesn't actually make sense. And, her father also.
Yes. So her father is quoted as saying, "It's not possible. That's not Lara. You don't just fall into a trash chute. You don't commit suicide that way. And you certainly don't go in accidentally when the door is 15 inches by 18 inches and you're 5 foot 10 inches tall."
Yeah, that's a tight squeeze. It's an effort. Again, the purse laying outside, very odd.
Yeah, the idea that, someone 5'10", I'm only 5 feet tall, so that's a whole foot taller than me. I can't imagine someone that size thinking that they would slip into a trash chute. Like, it doesn't,
And that
I
doesn't
mean, obviously, yeah, it doesn't make sense. We're thinking, if you want to play the other side here, and, well, she's not thinking logically, she's drunk, but I just don't know how a trash chute really even comes into your mind. Like you said, on the 27th floor, you just go out to the balcony or the fire escape. This is bizarre, and it's so violent and scary, like that you would go into this enclosed dark space. It's really bizarre.
It is. And that brings us exactly to the alternative theory in this case. One that Lara's family believes is the only one that makes sense, and it's that she was murdered.
That's right. So enter Dr. Michael Baden, former NYC chief medical examiner. You may remember him from the Jeffrey Epstein case. Laura's father asked him to review this case. In Baden's conclusion, Laura may have died by homicidal ligature strangulation and then was placed in the chute.
Yeah, he noted the lack of internal bleeding, torn blouse, pale line on her neck. He said all of it pointed to one thing, that she was actually dead before she even entered that trash chute.
That is a disturbing and fascinating theory, just, from like a crime scene suspectology perspective, like the idea that someone would have killed Laura and then thought, I have to get rid of the body. I have to find a way to cover my tracks.
Which
So the idea that a person who, we talk about the theory that Lara committed suicide and she was desperate and she was looking for a way to end her own life and, enter the trash chute. Well, you can also say that someone who killed her would be desperate and panicked and looking for a way to hide the body, enter the trash chute.
and would have
So,
to know that there were no security cameras in that trash chute, which I think is, a miss on the building's part.
yeah, I mean, just in the hallway,
Yeah.
you would think, can't we see how she entered the trash chute? You can't see that angle. You can't see if she was alone, if someone was with her, if she was conscious. Yeah, I guess I always thought that those hallways in those big New York high rises that they had security cameras, like sort of the 360-degree dome, but that's
Yeah, I think
obviously
many
not the
do, but
case.
clearly we're missing it in this case in 2018.
Right, which is not that long ago, right? I mean, you would think that they would have cameras, and I mean, this is a nice place that she was living. I guess, there's also on the other, the flip side of that, maybe they wanted privacy for their, high-end residents, and so maybe that's why there weren't cameras in the hallways. They felt like maybe it was an invasion. I don't know. It's very interesting. I know hotels always have those cameras, and that solved many a murder case in determining who entered, someone's room and who was the last person to see them alive. And I can think of a case where someone was killed inside a hotel room and then they couldn't figure out how, the last thing they saw was them going into the hotel room and they see it on camera in the hallway, and then they're like, but they never checked out, they never left, and where are they? And then you see someone with a rolling suitcase leaving the room, and the victim's inside, and that's how they got out. But again, cameras,
Yeah.
they can answer a lot of questions and in speculation if they're in place and functioning. But in this case, everyone's left with their theories. So, everyone always looks at the closest person to the victim. And so we have to talk about the fact that Lara had an estranged husband. They were going through an extremely contentious divorce. There were millions of dollars at stake. They had real estate holdings. There was the custody of their son. And so this comes into play. And so Lara's estranged husband, David, he gets involved in some different court cases, and including the fact that his company had filed for bankruptcy in 2016, so 2 years prior to this incident. So this is what's going on in her personal life. She is seen at this World Cup watch party, is happy, by all appearances. On the outside, you would not know, that this turmoil was going on, but those that knew her well knew that she was going through a very difficult time and that this divorce was heated.
Yeah, and things were looking up. So it's interesting timing that the very next day, Lara was supposed to get her visitation rights to her son reinstated. I mean, I think you can't ignore that timing in this case. It's certainly certainly some interesting timing, I'll say. Her family said she was, as a result, happy, hopeful. I mean, she's high-fiving the doorman on her way in. And this just doesn't seem like someone ready to end her life. Of course, we never know what's going on in someone's head, but it sort of supports her family absolutely discounting the suicide theory.
Yes, and the idea that she would kill herself on the eve of getting to see her son, that's not adding up for a lot of people. And so in 2021, and I believe there's even a subsequent lawsuit a few years later, Lara's dad, Nicholas Prychodko, filed a wrongful death lawsuit. So this is something that is, available to people whenever the criminal system is not working as quickly as you would like, or even, as a supplement to a criminal case. You can file a wrongful death lawsuit. It's a civil lawsuit, and it is a completely separate action from the criminal case. And so obviously, regular people, civilians, we can't file criminal charges on someone. We can't charge someone with a crime, but you can file a wrongful death lawsuit if you believe that the person, someone close to you was wrongfully taken from this life. And it's a way, some might call it like a loophole, that you can seek justice. And so this lawsuit included bombshell claims. Lara's father put out the theory that there was a hitman, referred to as John Doe, that was hired by Lara's estranged husband, and that he, it was a murder for hire. It was a contract killing, according to Lara's father's case. And he, put evidence in this lawsuit or accusations, I should say, that there was tracking software on Lara's laptop, and that the hitman was waiting for her on the 27th floor. The theory would be that he strangled her and then shoved her body down the chute, leaving the purse behind, as we know. So this is a completely alternate theory presented in court with, legal paperwork, filings. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, and also interesting is the suit even alleges a follow-up meeting where David, her estranged husband, paid the hitman. No details of where or when that meeting occurred, except that after the murder.
Right.
But no charges have actually been filed, not against David, not against anyone, not against a fictitious or non-fictitious or John Doe hitman. Nothing.
Right.
Nothing's moved on that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And, the idea that you can put forth this theory, and if it were true, there should be legal consequences, not just civilly, but criminally. Obviously, they're alleging a murder for hire conspiracy. So I think it's important to note that, as you said, no charges have been filed. No one's been arrested in this case to date. And David's legal team called the claims in the lawsuit baseless. They said the hitman was a fictitious person. And, the city of New York still says that there's no crime suspected. So this is one of those undetermined deaths, considered an accidental death or a suicide, just non-criminal, according to, the official position in this case.
Yeah, I can't believe that, honestly. But
Yeah.
I guess that's why we are still pending on justice.
Right.
I know, I'm sure they're behind the scenes. No one has given up on this. Laura's friends remain heartbroken. Her sister Talia called Lara her best friend, her soulmate. Said there's a hole in her heart that will never be filled. Of course. I mean, this is just so tragic.
It really is. And, her friends have said that they can't even take the garbage out without thinking of Lara. I mean, as she put it, you don't fall down a trash chute. Someone did that to her. And so her friends, they have this daily reminder of the fact that Lara was doing something, completely normal, had been having a normal day, and the idea that her life would end in a trash chute, they are left grappling with that. And it's so sad, to think, of her son who's left behind and doesn't know what happened to his mother. And, you just really, there's so many questions in this one, Susan.
There is, and it's been more than 7 years, and the questions are still there.
Yeah, they're not going away. People are asking, the same questions that they were right after this case came out. Did she fall? Was she pushed? Is this a cover up for murder? I think, we've talked about this, and there's evidence on both sides, and it's one of those where I feel like they have to keep on this, and they have to keep looking for additional evidence. I think the fact that the family, hired a private medical examiner to look at the autopsy and discovered like this sign of ligature strangulation, that is really, really important to me, in my opinion, because that doesn't happen in a trash compactor. Like, if you get put in a trash compactor, I can't really see a scenario where some type of rope gets around your neck, right? Like, how is that going on? Was the apartment searched? Did they find anything, consistent with a ligature? I've seen cases where people have used, things like shoelaces or jumper cables. Um, it doesn't always have to be like a traditional, what you would think if someone was strangled, that they used a rope. Like, a lot of people don't have a rope hanging around their house. So, what could have caused that line around her neck? That's also interesting to me because manual strangulation, that's not what's being alleged here. Obviously we know that people are capable of killing someone with their bare hands if they are in this state of rage and, sort of seeing red, and the idea that things could get physically violent just hand to hand. But according to the expert here, it's a ligature. So that opens up the possibility of, more evidence of an actual item that could have been recovered. And, you think about the steps that might have been lost to time if this wasn't done back then. Obviously, here we are, as we're recording this in 2025, and this happened in 2018. So that evidence is long gone, likely. It's not like something that could be searched for today, but you have to wonder if that apartment, if it was inventoried, if that evidence is in a locker somewhere, I have a lot of questions, Susan.
Yeah, I know you do, and so do I. This is really reminiscent to me of the Ellen Greenberg case. And, we saw a recent reopening and a medical examiner kind of changing his mind in that case. So it is possible, so many years later for someone to say, you know what, let me relook at this. Let me open it up again. Let me see if they're, maybe I'll reverse a decision or change. And, I do believe that possibility is still open. So,
Yeah, I agree.
I hope it goes there, and I hope, some attention is paid to it.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those cases that lingers in your mind because if it was murder, that means someone staged this crime scene.
Mhm.
And if it wasn't, then why do so many signs point to something else?
Yeah, and, her father, Laura's father, is going to keep pushing. The family says they're not gonna stop until someone reopens the investigation, until someone listens, and I truly hope that they get that justice, that they get to reopen the investigation.
I agree. I hope that someone who knows something, can come forward because at the end of the day, this is a family that's looking for answers, that's looking for justice. There was, a daughter, a sister, a mother, a woman who, deserves something better than having her death just undetermined.
Yeah, agree. Um, well, thank you for listening to Justice Pending this episode. If you know something, anything that could help, if you were around that area in Manhattan back in 2018, please contact the NYPD or Manhattan District Attorney's Office. It's never too late to offer a tip.
Absolutely. I think that people, need to think about this case and remember Lara, if nothing else. I hope that people know, people that know Laura and love her know that she hasn't been forgotten. And, even through this podcast, we want to make sure that her voice is heard.
Yeah. And we'll be back next week with another case, another voice waiting for justice. Until then, stay sharp and stay tuned.
Justice Pending is recorded in Dallas, Texas for Rebel Studios. It's hosted by me, Claire Sanama, and Susan Passoni. Our theme music is Bending Truth, licensed at premiumbeat.com. We appreciate all listener feedback. Leave a review wherever you're listening right now, and we might read it on the air.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.